So, unlike advertisers who are trying to sell you an identity, a belief about yourself, artists aren't necessarily trying to sell you anything or convince you of anything. They use the lines that they use when they draw just because they're legitimately feeling those feelings. Just as it would be just as difficult for you to hide if you were really angry. If you walked into a room, people would know by your body language. And that's true for a lot of the artists we're going to look at. The way they're feeling actually changes the way they draw and the way they move their lines on the paper. So if you could look at this drawing study for Starry Night by Van Gogh, you see that the lines in this drawing might match your joyful lines, might match your feminine lines, you can use other adjectives. It doesn't have to be just those six. It's carefree. It's wild. All these things that he's feeling as he's looking at this landscape or thinking about this landscape comes across in his line, more than likely subconsciously, because that's what he's feeling, or not subconsciously. Either way, he's feeling those feelings, and you feel them too when you look at them. The next artist is, sorry, wrong way, Felix Del Mar. And as you can see, the lines he's using in this charcoal drawing are strong, aggressive, and it goes with the subject matter, which is a horse, workhorse, pulling a cart, dragging the city down with him. You can see that. And so the lines cannot be carefree and expressive. They have to be strong and aggressive, more like the Red Bull or maybe even the Sprite lines. He's feeling that way about what he's drawing, and that's the lines that he's going to use. Tons of movement, tons of strength, tons of power in this drawing. The next one is a Rembrandt drawing, or actually it's a print of the crucifixion. And again, the lines are not so clear cut here. So, as you know, the story of the crucifixion isn't necessarily one feeling. It's a lot of feelings. It's joy, it's sad, it's anger, and the lines reflect that. So you have dark areas here, lines going down, but then you have the figure Christ in the middle, standing straight and powerful with his arms moving up. And line, I don't just mean visual lines, but I mean bodies. Oops, sorry. Bodies can be lines. Horizons can be lines. Trees can be lines. Anything that is on the paper can be a line. Line isn't just what you draw. Another example is this drawing by Aubrey Beardsley. She's drawing from a play of Salome and I believe it is St. John the Baptist. And she seduces him and cuts off his head. So we have these curly lines that suggest femininity and carefree, but at the same time, these lines dripping down and curving down that show illness. And they're also very creepy. They're not as feminine as, say, these lines by Matisse. Well, not necessarily feminine, but the lines are thin. They're curved. There's not a straight line in here. And if you think of her body as a line, she's laying down, reclined. She's not powerful. She's submissive. And the lines are very thin. And it all gives this feeling of like, oh, womanly submission, delicate flower of a woman, versus this image of a woman, because these lines are strong and dark. I'm not figuring out. Okay, and then next is we have an illustration by Paul Pope of Batman, and as you can see, these lines are really jagged and dark and powerful. It wouldn't work to do, Batman with these lines. It just doesn't give the feeling that Batman is supposed to give. So We have to do aggressive lines like your monster can, because it matters, because it gives us a feeling of what kind of person this is. What is the Batman character like? You have to use the right lines to evoke those feelings about that character. I'll just show you a few more. These are a drawing by Eugene Delacroix, and this is beautiful, graceful lines of a horse and a rider, you know, very smooth, very, lots of movement, lots of gracefulness, and it just shows like how active and alert these horses are, and yet they're very beautiful. Sorry, I'm going everywhere. It doesn't matter if the work is abstract or representational. This is a totally abstract drawing by Cy Twombly, repetitive swirls here. And it gives almost like a feeling of nervousness, a feeling of obsessiveness, maybe. Sorry about that. And all of that comes across. You don't need to be able to recognize something. You can tell by the lines that someone who does this is going to feeling anxious, nervous, and any other adjective you can think of. So in your sketchbook, I want you to make a grid like this of 4 things, 4 squares, and you don't have to copy the picture, but you're going to copy the lines. So how do the lines look different? So do a few examples of the Van Gogh, Delmar, the Rembrandt, Matisse. You can pause it and then do another 3 boxes with the Aubrey Beardsley, the Paul Pope, and the Eugene Delacroix, just to show an example of how their lines are different, because I want y'all to have a good line vocabulary. And I'll be checking this in your sketchbook.